Welcome again to this year's SMWCon Fall 2012. It's a great pleasure to see, let me also recall that. It's a great pleasure to see so many people here. I think we have quite an exciting program. We already had a very nice tutorial day yesterday, but many other interesting things are definitely coming up. For now, we have a short introduction by Professor York Sure-Velter, who is not only the president of this wonderful institution hosting us here, but also holds a chair in applied computer science at the University of Koblenz-Landau, and has been working in Semantic Web, knowledge management, and related areas for quite a few years now. Join me in welcoming York, and without any further ado.
Thank you, Markus, and a warm welcome. So, welcome to GESIS. You might ask yourself the question, what do I do in an Institute for Social Sciences? And actually the idea of my little welcome talk is to give you maybe a little impression of how things fit together, how computer science and social scientists might work together. And by doing that, I will briefly introduce my own institute here. So I hope you have a wonderful stay here. I hope you have coffee. Please enjoy the rest of my talk. How did you wake up today? Are you awake already? Hopefully. Was it more like this? Or was it more like this? Good mood? Bad mood? Well, I don't know. Maybe you don't know, but Twitter knows. And Twitter confirms it. People tend to wake up in good mood and are happiest on weekends. Sounds quite intuitive, does it? Well, actually, this is a kind of a small-scale study, you could say. But still, it's a kind of study with 2.4 million people in 84 countries performed on top of Twitter feeds. And it actually conforms what a lot of other studies already found out. So in the end, it was more like showing that these kinds of results can be done by using social semantic web applications. Now, do you know Ed by any chance? Someone here from the United States? So this podcast was the beginning of Obama's first presidency campaign. And actually it was the beginning of an internet warfare, you could say, for politics. And if you really look at it, what was it? Ed was a kind of guy who told why he would vote for a certain guy who was running for presidency. So here you found suddenly that politics catched up new media to run a campaign which has run never before. So this was a kind of really facilitating internet and so on. And this has a long tradition. If you look at Franklin D. Roosevelt, well, at that point of time, obviously you didn't have internet, you didn't have Facebook, you didn't have Twitter, but you had fireside chats. So this was his means really to convince people that he would be a good president. Well, there was a follow-up, of course, by John F. Kennedy. And by that time, technology had advanced quite significantly. So what John F. Kennedy used was television. And he was able to reach a far greater amount of people with his presidency run than Franklin D. Roosevelt could ever reach. And then, well, Barack Obama somehow introduced the next wave, and that was internet video, Twitter, Facebook, all kinds of different technological things helped him really to become president. Not only, but certainly it was substantial contribution. But now for a completely different picture, let's have a look briefly at some large-scale studies conducted by social sciences. First is the European Value Study. You might not know it, don't worry. But just to let you know, this is a study which is conducted in 47 European member countries and where about 70,000 interviewees are participating. Another large-scale study is Piarc, which we are conducting. It's a kind of PISA for adults, so it's about competency, measuring of competencies. There, 25 OECD member countries participate, and we have almost 125,000 interviewees. It's 5,000 per country. And these are really large-scale studies. However, let's have a look at the population. What is 100,000 against the world population of 7 million? And even if you look at the internet population, it's about 2.4 million. Let's not argue about how statistics are being measured. It's just about the magnitudes. Internet population, 2.4 million. And if you believe Facebook, it has more than 1 billion people. Well, what does it mean? more than 1 billion. Well, it's monthly active users, as they call it. But certainly worthwhile mentioning is that the website of Facebook is available in more than 70 languages. And that is quite a number. And the question is, what can you get out of this? So how can you conduct studies like the European Value Study and maybe like the Piarc study, maybe on a global scale? So far, this hasn't been actually done. Let's make a little small joke. So here's another study which is called PAIRFOM, and some colleagues of us are doing this. So it's the panel analysis of intimate relationships and family dynamics. So what is being studied there is, well, how family life is evolving over time. What is happening there? Intimate relationships, what is going on there? And now let's ask a little question. What is GERFOM instead of PAIRFOM? Well, very easy, obviously. It's the global analysis of intimate relationships and family dynamics. Data collection started in 2011. Can you imagine where? Well, Facebook timeline is pretty much about this. Obviously, the study design of PAIRFOM is much more complicated. It's a questionnaire with a 4 hours interview which has to be conducted. It is a much more complex design than what is being actually asked and what is represented in the timeline of Facebook. But a lot of things that are actually happening in the real world, in social life, are captured somewhere, for example here. And they are captured in a way that data is available. In a sense that you could say it's a kind of sensor network where a lot of things are being monitored and stored. And so far, only few people address the question, what can you get out of these data about the social life in the global civilization? So let's take another picture, finally. Let's say that this black guy is a computer scientist and that this lady in the blue shirt is a social scientist. Well, they might ask questions like, computer scientist, how do I get sustainable and scalable data access, for example, to Web 2.0 data? How can I solve this? Social scientists would be asked questions like, well, what is the study design? What is the sampling? What is the reliability of the data? But really, if you want to solve all these questions on top of maybe a global data set, like Twitter, like Facebook, then those two people have to come together and ask questions like, which problems can I actually solve with these data? And which data should I use for solving these problems? And actually, those questions have not been answered so far. And this is a great opportunity for collaboration. And this is a great opportunity where also I see our own institute. So what is GESIS? GESIS is an infrastructure for social sciences. If you pronounce it English, it's like Jesus. We have small buttons saying Jesus loves you. It's a lot of fun to wear them. Well, actually, it's a German acronym. I don't want to explain it right here. But it's about an infrastructure for social sciences. So what we do is we offer research-based services to the social science community. And we can do this, research-based services, because we also conduct basic research in actually 3 areas. And I will introduce them a little bit later. We are focused around the user community. So the close contact to actually researchers, to social scientists, is very important to us. We are frequently at the typical conferences, like here in Frankfurt at the Sociological Conference, which was also the 100th anniversary of this conference, quite interestingly. 100 years of computer science conferences, do we have? Getting close, not yet. We are located in 3 locations. You are here in our beautiful spot in Cologne, but actually we are also located in Mannheim. Cologne and Mannheim are our biggest facilities, and we have a small office in Berlin. And we collaborate very closely with universities, University of Mannheim, Koblenz, and Cologne. We have 5 scientific departments. So this would be the data archive, where you get access to research data for social sciences. Mainly, basically. We have the monitoring of the society and the societal change, which is actually conducting studies, large-scale studies, where we have a view on the German, but also on the European population. We have the Department on Specialized Information for the Social Sciences, which provides access to open access publications and to further publications, for example. And we have the Department on Survey Design Methodology, which supports researchers in conducting large-scale studies, for example, telling them how to do the sampling right, for example, telling them how to do the questionnaires right. And we have the department Knowledge Technologies, which actually brings a lot of these pieces and bits together by providing a digital infrastructure for our services. Our research by nature is interdisciplinary, and you might have already seen the key areas. First is survey design and methodology. So that's the methodological research in social sciences. And actually here we were participating in doing the German census by doing the sampling for the census, and that was quite a significant research challenge because you wanted to say something about the whole population, but actually what we did was we only had a sample of 10% of the German population. And maybe asking only 10% of the population caused much less trouble than a couple years ago when they tried to ask all the people in Germany. Of course, we do substantive social science research, but usually our researchers do that by using the data sets that we have available, like the Albus, that's the German population study, the European Social Survey, and some others. And this is accompanied and completed by doing research in applied computer science and information science. So that's web science, that's information retrieval, semantic web, of course, bibliometry, and things like that. And GESIS is actually unique by bringing together expertise in all these three different areas. Our offers are centered around the user requirements. So if you try to find out what is GESIS actually offering, then you will find this research data lifecycle. We are starting with providing access to, well, what is research, what are the publications and what are the data available, that is searching. Then if you find out, well, I have a question which has not been answered so far, then you do some study planning and we support your study planning. We help you collecting the data, we help you analyzing the data, and we help you archiving and registering the data. Do you know the German idiom, dicke Bretter bohren? It roughly means to drill thick holes and actually translates into to have a tedious task ahead. Since we are an institute which has a certain base funding, we are able to maintain and grow global networks, which is a really tedious task, I can tell you. And I can only name some examples here. You might not be aware of this, but for example here the CESTA network, this is the European network of data archives, and there has been a long ongoing tradition in collaboration and in joining forces to have maybe at some point of time a unique access, not just a unique, an intuitive, simple access, to all the data available in Europe. And here you can clearly see how, for example, semantic web technologies can contribute. And just to give you an idea of what kind of studies GESIS is also conducting, right now we are participating in the German longitudinal election study where we are focusing on getting data around the Bundestagswahl, the federal elections. So there people are being interviewed. Well, what is your opinion on the topics? What is your opinion on the parties? Whom will you vote? Actually, at the same time, the text is monitored. So what are parties writing, what they propose to do after they have been elected? And you can conduct a lot of interesting studies if you compare the two things. So what are people telling, the politicians telling, and what are people believing what politicians are saying, for example. This data is being collected and afterwards it is available for research analysis, basically for free. Last but not least, I would like to highlight one service, and that is data registration. So social scientists really rely on data, and a lot of effort is being spent on producing data. However, so far, people producing data don't get credits. So every researcher usually gets credits by being cited. Publications are being cited. And sometimes a lot of effort which goes into data production, well, there's no reputation mechanism, even though it's scientific work. So we try to overcome this problem by saying data sets are, well, similar to publications, and they should be cited as well. What is being needed are two things, two ingredients. Well, first, you need a kind of metadata schema like Dublin Core for research data. Second, you need unique identifiers like DOIs, which are also being used for publications. And this is what we established by opening the Registry Agency for Social and Economic Data. This is actually Ruud, who is conducting the European Value Study, and his dataset was the first to get a DOI from us. So if you look now into Google Scholar, for example, and you type in the DOI, what you get there is here, I only show the first hit. Well, this is a publication, and in the publication there exists a reference to the dataset, because the work, Subjective Life Satisfaction in the European Union, Determinants and Policy Implications, well, this work clearly is based on the European Value Survey. And now within such a paper you find as an ordinary reference, a reference to the dataset which has been used to conduct the research. And it's two sides of the coin. The first side is the Ruud and the other researchers get reputation for producing the dataset, but also the research which is being conducted can be repeated much more easily, because you know exactly which dataset is underlying the research data. So this also facilitates the transparency in research a lot, and this is something which in social sciences, well, has some room for improvement. So I think with this offer we can really make a very significant contribution. If you think from the semantic web perspective, well, it's only the beginning. Now you have publications with a unique identifier, DOIs or URNs. Now you have research data with DOIs, sometimes URNs, and you can connect them very easily. It's a triple. It's nothing more than a triple. A publication is relying on a certain data set, and you can uniquely and on a global level combine these two things. The third thing which is actually missing, so if you're working on this, congratulations, I think this will be the next wave, it's author IDs. So how can you uniquely identify authors? And then you have three things which you can put together: who is actually authoring which papers, and who is producing which data sets, and which papers are relying on which data sets. And then you have a clear transparency in the research area. So the motto here is give credit where credit is due. This brings me to an end. Very warm welcome. I hope I could give you a glimpse on what GESIS is doing. Please feel free to ask me and all the GESIS members for any further questions that you might have on our services. Of course, we are using the Semantic MediaWiki, and there will be a presentation about this, so I didn't include it in my presentation. Thank you all for coming here, and I wish you all a very successful conference. Thank you.